Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where we explore ways to get healthy, wealthy, and wise. With a combination of guest interviews and solo episodes, I hope you will be inspired and motivated to become the best of whatever you are. I'm Elle Russ, #1 best-selling author and subject expert with over a decade of helping thousands of people across the globe. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about free guides, masterclasses, online courses, and more. Enjoy the show. All right, special repeat offender guest on the show today, Stuart Tomc. I've known him since high school, to be honest with you, but he has over 30 years of experience in the dietary supplement industry and has really saved my life along the way by introducing me to some things. So I always want to talk to him about what he's into and the latest research that he's on. But he has helped sell 1 billion in supplements. He's appeared in over 8,000 radio, TV, podcast interviews, and he currently works directly with a publicly traded Scandinavian company and an all-star team of doctors and scientists. And we're going to get into the big topic of omega-3s today, how important they are, how to gauge it, how to judge it, what are the differences between the fish oils and sourcing and all of that. So, Stuart, welcome back.
Elle, it's so great to be back on your show. Thank you for having me.
I think every time I've interviewed you, I love to remind you that it was 30 years ago, you worked for North American Urban Spice Company, who makes Oreganol P73, which to this day is a product that I am so glad you introduced me to. It's the only one I use if I use it. It has been an absolute freaking savior in my life. Had I not known you and been turned on to that, I mean, that's something that, I recommend to others as well for particular things. And I know this is not a topic about oregano oil, but it's to say that I'm always kind of, ever since that experience, I'm like, what is Stu doing? What kind of knowledge has he dropped? So you've been actually in the world of omega-3s for a very long time, but tell us how you started to get into it, your interest in omegas, and how you felt they influenced and helped your life for the better.
Well, thank you, Elle. I think it started in Chicago, where we grew up together at Sherwin's Health Food Store over on Diversey and Clark Street. Do you remember Sherwin's Health Food Store?
I do, yeah.
Do you remember I worked there?
No, I do not remember that.
I did. That's where I got started.
That's great.
I ran the juice bar at Sherwin's Health Food Store, and I had been following Karen Calabrese from Chicago, the raw food woman. Karen, if you know Karen from
Yep.
Karen's Fresh Corner. In any case, it was about that time that I got introduced to the world of lipids and omega-3 fatty acids. And I had some coworkers, such a great story, at Sherwin's Health Food Store. I just looked at the healthiest, most vibrant people that were older, people that were aging successfully. And I remember asking this woman, I wish I could remember her name. She was a doctor back in Germany, but was not a doctor here in the United States. And she had pointed out to me the criticality of nutrition for keeping healthy people healthy. But I'll never forget this. She says to me, Stuart, if you were to pick one nutrient, one dietary supplement that people really need, and we're going to learn more in the future, she used to say, we're going to find out how critical omega-3 fatty acids are.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to understand omega-3s, we're going to have to understand omega-6s. So this is in 1988. I'm told by the healthiest, most vibrant, oldest person I've ever met, you better learn about these lipids. And that got me started, and I've been hooked ever since.
Okay, so that's interesting that it was that timing, because when she said that, the omega-3s that are available to buy, to take, didn't happen till 2000 later, right? Yeah.
Well, that's when
mid-90s, took forever.
Well, that's when the fish oil wars kicked in, as I call them. But
who won that war, by the way?
I think Nordic Naturals, that I ended up working for. I was their global educator and spokesperson. I think Nordic Naturals won. But let's remember, going back in history, that it all started with grandma's cod liver oil. That's where it
It
started.
was always it's like that old wives' tale kind of. We put it in that category. Here, take a spoonful of cauliflower oil.
And I don't think we fully appreciated back then the true mechanisms of action, which factors are the actors. And we're going to unpack this and get into it. But why is it that grandma's cod liver oil paid enormous dividends? Why is it that historically people that ate fish that had more omega 3 in their diet, because that's primarily where we get omega 3s from, and people that had less omega 6s, whether they were from grains or from animal products? Why is it that people that ate fish historically had different health outcomes than people that did not eat enough omega 3? So that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to connect with you again and to come back on your show. Because, Elle, since I spoke to you last, I've discovered the most significant breakthrough in test-based nutrition in the last 25 years. I'm working with a Scandinavian publicly traded company, which mission, check this out, their mission is to become the biggest preventative health company in the world, reinvent the nutritional space, measurably move the dial on public health globally. And of course, I thought about you and wanted to discuss it with you on your show.
Well, I love this, and I love that you're still in this game and part of helping so many people. I love their mission of preventative. Um, let's get it. So just let's do a, grade school level conversation for people to understand. Like, first of all, we mentioned like fish is the primary source of omega 3s, but like, what is omega 3 in and of itself? And like, what does it do in the body that's beneficial without getting too in the weeds for the people that are just like, give me a little bit of a rundown on why I even need to continue listening.
Well, omega 6s, if you were just to put both of your fists in front of your face, got your left hand and your right hand. This way, we're all looking at the same thing. Imagine your left fist, those are your omega 6s. And they come primarily from seed oils and from animal products, from meat, omega 6s. On the right hand side of your fist, your other fist, would be omega 3s, which come primarily from fish, algae, or green leafy vegetables. Ideally, Elle, we want the omega 6 and omega 3s to be in balance. We want them to be what we call a 1-to-1 ratio, ideally one part omega 6, one part omega 3, maybe 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 at the max. That's considered the safe zone. Anything from 3-to-1 omega 6 to omega 3, 2-to-1 omega 6 to omega 3, or 1-to-1 in perfect balance. Are you following me?
Yes, let me break in there though on the omega 6s, seed oils. Now, okay, some bad seed oils. Our audience knows don't do canola, don't do corn oil, and all this garbage. But it also can come from just like literally seeds. Talk about the foods that omega 6 comes from, because there could be like a raw vegan that has their shit off balance because of too much of this. So can you tell us some of the natural ways it appears to?
Well, you're making an excellent point. The omega 6s are ubiquitous in nature and are found in seeds and nuts that are healthy, in things like avocados that are healthy, almond butter, say organic, non GMO avocado oil, for example, or poppy seed oil. Seeds and nuts are primarily where we find a lot of these omega 6s. So,
Because
to your
I
point,
wanted people to understand that it's not just like, oh, well, I don't eat crappy seed oil, so I don't have to worry about it. It's like, oh no, but your balance could be off because of these other natural healthy things. And that's where, uh, yeah, glad you clarified.
and well, that's the entire focus on why I wanted to be here today and to help people realize that the secret is to start testing and stop guessing. This ratio of omega 6 to omega 3, this is the most important number for health that almost nobody knows. It's your omega 6-3 balance score. So, to your point, if we want an equal balance, why do we want a balance? Omega 6s make the pro inflammatory signals, omega 3s make the anti inflammatory signals. So it really is the balance of omega-6 to omega-3. 3 to 1 is the safe zone. 2 to 1 is better. 1 to 1 would be the best. Most people, Elle, including myself, fail the balance test. This company that I'm working with, they've developed an at-home dry blood spot test. Just imagine a little finger prick test like you would take.
My favorite. I don't want needles in my arms. I hate it to this day, and I've had to do it so much because through the thyroid issues, you got to get tested regularly, and you have to, before you fix it to get optimized. And I hate it so much. So when these kind of tests came out, it's just like such a game changer.
And these were originally developed for NASA. I don't think people understand that. The omega-3 blood spot test is a perfect, accurate picture of what's actually going on in you, in your body. So what this balance is, Elle, this balance between omega-6 and omega-3 is really a test that tells you how good your diet is and if you're in the safe zone. If people were to focus on that, Elle, this is an at-home blood spot test to tell you how good your diet is and if you are in the safe zone. So all of the years of arguing about which brand is better than another brand, what ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is perfect, the conversation has evolved into start testing, stop guessing. So let's just revisit this one more time for anyone new. Omega-6 is pro-inflammatory, omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. You want them in balance in your 37 trillion cells. And if you just prick your finger, put 2 drops of blood onto the blotter, and then ship it back to Oslo, Norway, to the science center, Vitas Analytics in Norway, you then register your email, and they're going to send you back a list, Elle, of 11 different fatty acids. It's going to tell you precisely the balance between the pro-inflammatory omega-6 and the anti-inflammatory omega-3. It's going to give you concrete, actionable, detailed information on how you can improve your diet, and will tell you whether or not you are in the safe or in the inflammatory danger zone. How cool is that?
I love it. We talked a little bit before we started recording. It had been about 10 years ago where I did a very in-depth, and again, what's nice about what you're talking about here is that sometimes when they measured these things in the past, they come with tests that are like $3,000 package of like a whole test, and it's in there. I did that at one point, and my omegas were great. I was taking omega-3. I mean, I wasn't eating the fish. I was taking the supplement, and everything was looking great. But then I haven't tested since, and I've dropped the ball probably on supplementation. And then you mentioned that, even you tested and you were like, oh man, I need to revisit this even myself. Even us pursuing health, knowing what to do, you can get off track. You can get off track. So let's talk a little bit about getting back on track. And once someone sees that their ratio is off, it's pretty much a clear sign on what you need to do in a dietary way. But I want to talk to you about the different supplements and oils out there. There's people that take cod liver oil, people that take salmon oil, or, oil from sardines, or, I'm not sure exactly is Nordic Naturals cod liver oil. So give us like, what's the best, or rate them for us and let us know, like, what should we be looking for? If we can tolerate it. Obviously, if you're allergic to cod, you're not doing it. I can't do krill oil and shellfish oil because I have an allergy. Give us a rundown of some of the great options out there.
Well, ultimately, what matters are those test results, and I'll break down the different options for the audience. But at the end of the day, it's your Elle's individual omega-6/3 balance score. That's what's important. So I'll make sure that you get a test. Thank you for being always transparent with the audience and with me as a friend. I told you before we recorded, I failed miserably. Elle, I took this test 18 years ago myself, and I got like the equivalent of a 3 to 1, 3 parts omega-6, 1 part omega-3. I was in the safe zone. I just recently tested, and I came back from Norway. I was just in Norway myself at the Science Center where we do the blood spot testing with Vitas Analytics. I was stunned that I got a 13 to 1.
Yeah.
13 parts omega 6, 1 part omega 3. What did that tell me? The majority, well, all of my cells have more omega 6s than omega 3s. What does that mean? Every time my immune system is challenged, I'm making the pro inflammatory signals. I just don't make as many of the anti inflammatory signals. I'm out of balance. My diet is not as good as I thought it was. I was not in the safe zone, and it motivated me, Elle. I laughed out loud. My nickname is the Omega Man. You don't make up your own nickname. My friends gave me that. I sent it to some of the scientists I'm working with now with Zenzino, and they were laughing at me. It was good. It was healthy because it was a nice reminder that it doesn't matter what I know. It doesn't matter what I teach. None of that matters. At the end of the day, the tissue is the issue. Our number, our omega 3 number, is the most important number for health we don't know. And I predict, and we predict, Elle, that on your standard lipid panel, listen to this, within 10 years, you're going to get your results back from the doctor, HDL, LDL, triglycerides. By that time, we'll probably be measuring some other things as well. But the omega 3 index and the omega 6/3 balance will be on the standard blood panel as more predictive of your current and future health status than any other biomarker available today. So when people debate the question that you asked, which is better, sardine oil or cod liver oil? Is salmon oil better than krill oil? At the end of the day, what matters is what is your individual omega 6/3 balance score? What is your number? And I think I've also found the most effective product I've ever seen to help you increase your omega 3 status, to correct the omega 3 deficiency. And this is important. We need an oil L that's going to push out as many of the omega 6s as possible, and an oil that's going to push out the saturated fats that are also in our cell membrane. What happens when we don't have enough omega 3? When we're out of balance, when we're not in the safe zone, when we test at 4 to 1, I've seen scores as high as 100 to 1. Can you imagine that, Elle? 100 parts omega 6, 1 part omega 3. When you're that far out of balance, cell to cell signaling doesn't work as well. Communication breaks down. Number 2, nutrients do not get into our cells as effectively, and waste products do not get out. So on a cellular level, what matters is getting a 3 to 1, 2 to 1, or 1 to 1 on the omega 6/3 balance score. That being said, Elle, people still keep asking you, what's the difference between all these omega 3 products, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's whatever one that works for you that delivers if you can eat fish, let's say, or if you can, I don't know.
Well, I think I found something. I know I found something, and I couldn't wait to share this with you. Zenzino has a completely different take on purified fish oils, a story I'd never heard before. Their vision and their scientific understanding is that when you make purified fish oil, when you refine it and remove all of the mercury, the PCBs, the dioxins, the fire retardants, the microplastics that are in fish, when you molecularly distill the fish oil, you strip out all of the antioxidants that were connected to the algae, the florotannins. You see, this all started with algae and aquatic plants. They have polyphenols and fatty acids glued together in the algae. The plankton eat the algae. The small fish eat the plankton. The whales eat the small fish, and the Inuit ate the whale blubber. You remember the story. This is the entire omega 3 story. How it bioaccumulates all the way through the food chain. Well, what we've learned, what Zenzino has figured out, when you strip out all the mercury, You remove all the fluorotannins, the polyphenols that make the fish so potent. So what Zinzino did is they've realized, let's take the highest quality fish oil and combine it with super polyphenolic rich olive oil. So if you can imagine this,
Okay.
Elle,
I'm
it's a
interested.
Mediterranean diet in a bottle.
Right.
Every bottle is equal to 30 piles of anchovies and 300 olives.
I love
60.
both of those foods so much too.
I know you'd love this. That's why I couldn't wait to come on. And now, if you go to Norway and Sweden and Denmark and you say, have you heard of Zinzino? It's a household name.
Right.
Here in America, almost nobody knows of this balance concept because although they've been in business since 2005, all of their revenue is in Scandinavia and in Germany. And we're now here in America. And that's why I wanted people to realize it isn't just the test, it's the entire system that Zinzino created to have you test, take the balanced oil, and in 120 days, that's how long it takes for the red blood cells to completely turn over. Then you test again, and you can see with your own eyes going from out of balance into balance.
I'm thinking about, you know, I'm thinking about my stepfather, Ivar, my Danish stepdad, who, like, unless you're him and you are eating that freaking herring every day, you know, he's hitting those jars of herring every day, but a lot of people aren't doing that. And that it makes sense that this is all coming from that area because that's where it's at, and that's the dietary and longevity piece of those people, aside from just their way of life and the Huga spirit and all of that. But this is really fascinating. So it's combining some olive oil, olive with omega. This is fantastic. And so is it a liquid or pill form? Give us how do we do it?
Well, there's many formulas. There's a liquid that is, again, the highest quality fish oil, 60% triglyceride form fish oil with 40%, this is important, ultra high polyphenolic rich olive oil in the area of 2,000 parts per million. And the polyphenols are very important. The ones that come from olives actually help to turn on the genetic machinery for the body to make vitamin C. Let me say that again. The hydroxytyrosol, one of the polyphenols in the olive oil, turns on the genetic machinery for the human to make vitamin C. These polyphenols, Elle, help bring the fatty acids, they're chaperones. They bring the fatty acids into the cell membrane. These polyphenols go and feed the gut microbiota. They are prebiotics. These polyphenols combined with the omega-3 increase glutathione enzyme production 3x. This is a Mediterranean diet in a bottle. Imagine 30 piles of anchovies and 300 olives, and it's dosed based on weight, Elle. The whole time since Sherwin's Health Food Store, I've seen fish oil. They say, take 2 and call me in the morning. If you're giant, 2, you're underdosing. If you're tiny, you're overdosing.
Mhm.
Balance oil is dosed based on your body weight. If you weigh 140 pounds, you need a 300 milliliter bottle. If you're 280 pounds, you need 2 300 milliliter bottles. So it's a liquid. It's also a capsule. And they have a vegan, algae-based, and ahi flour-based, vegan, terrestrial, EPA, DHA source to correct the omega-3 deficiency. They also have one L that's called Aqua X, and that's a water-soluble version. That would be for someone that has horrible dysbiosis. Sometimes you've heard from people you've worked with over the years, they just have their digestion is so bad, they just don't do well with lipids at all. They're so upset in their stomach. We've got an answer for everyone. And then finally, We have a formula that has 4 times the polyphenols, a premium label that has up to 7,000 parts per million of the polyphenols. So this is a real advancement in the omega-3 conversation. This is the future of the omega-3 conversation. What is your number? That's what counts. Is the product more like food? Because when you take the refined fish oil and then add the extra virgin olive oil to it, you're basically putting that Inuit diet back together in a bottle, or as I call it, a Mediterranean diet in a bottle.
Amazing. I'm thinking back to, and maybe you can expand on this. He's not here, but it reminds me of a story from Kevin Ballister, who had a traumatic brain injury and he was in a coma with less than 10% chance of waking up. He did, but and now he helps other people who and families who this happened to their kids or family members. And one of the things that they do that the doctors wouldn't necessarily do in the hospital, but one of the things to bring people back online that he's seen over the years is extremely high doses of omegas. And it's something that, like, if you're in the hospital, the doctors are going to be like, we should start doing this. You know what I mean? But he helps, he works with families and he helps them. And it's just, he wrote a book called How to Feed a Brain. And it's one of their go-to things. And he said he has seen people light up and begin to talk again from these type of injuries after being administered high doses. Could you explain how that could be the case? You know, you're more of the guy who could explain the mechanisms behind why that would be beneficial in those situations.
Well, thank you so much. And this is work that's near and dear to my heart. I'm actually colleagues with and friends with Colonel Dr. Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis, a retired West Point grad, Army Ranger, MD, MPH, MBA. He's the author of the book When Brains Collide, which is another incredible resource for people interested in this subject. He runs the Brain Health Education Research Institute, and he has something called the omega-3 protocol that Colonel Lewis came up with for traumatic brain injury. There's also a CNN special with Sanjay Gupta and Mike Lewis, MD. He had a patient like you're talking about many years ago. And interestingly enough, Elle, he and his colleague, Captain Joseph R. Hiblin, they published a paper back in 2011 titled Suicide Death of Active Duty U.S. Military at Omega-3 Fatty Acid Status. And they used a very similar test and tested the omega-3 status of soldiers, 800 soldiers that had committed suicide, and found they had a 25-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, 25-to-1. So what you're talking about.
So when you were at 15-to-1, you're headed towards the military suicide.
No, that's what I saw. When I saw my 13-to-1, I'm like, I'm halfway there. And I've been feeling like it too. It was a powerful reminder because the brain is a supercomputer made out of fat. And if you put your fists in front of your face, omega-6, omega-3 in balance. If one of your fists is all the way up, 13 times higher, omega-6 than omega-3, you are out of balance. I was out of balance. My brain was out of balance. Well, what they found, for your question about traumatic brain injury, is when you do have this issue, then omega-3 is part of the building. They are the building blocks. Mm-hmm. That's what Colonel Lewis says. If you blow up a wall made out of bricks, and the bricks are made of omega-3, you need a truck filled with bricks to back up to where the explosion is and dump all that raw material back into the system. So I would encourage anyone interested in this to look up the book When Brains Collide, Michael Lewis, MD. There's a foreword from J.J. Virgin, and he talks about his particular case, similar to the one you talked about using omega-3, using nutrition in a place where there's no medical intervention at all. It's not the cure, it's not the treatment, it's the requisite substrate. It's what you need. If we're made of 37 trillion cells and we're only as healthy as our cells. The omega-6s and omega-3s live in that cell membrane. When you have 25 times more omega-6 than omega-3 and you get into an accident, boom, all the omega-6s create the pro-inflammatory signals. That's important, critical. However, if you got 25 times more omega-6 than omega-3, when you have that accident, you're not able to resolve the inflammation as efficiently. Are you visualizing this? This is why this number, in my opinion, is the most modifiable risk factor of anything you can do in nutrition, Elle. I think we should cross it off the list, right? Doesn't smoke cigarettes, check, right? Exercises, check. Has an omega-6/3 balance score of 3 to 1 or less, check. It's that foundational. But to get back to your question, I'd strongly encourage people to read When Brains Collide. Michael Lewis is a leader in the space of traumatic brain injury and omega-3, and he's one of the scientists and doctors that's working with me on this new project right now, Elle.
I think this discussion is akin to discussion of organ reserve, meaning like the old person doesn't die in the hospital because of the broken hip. It's because they never challenge their lungs enough. They get pneumonia in the hospital. They can't create this, right? The osteoporosis comes because you never challenge the muscle, right? And so if you have a good baseline, a great anti-inflammatory baseline, when shit happens, you get the flu, you get sick, you're in an accident, your leg gets injured, you're offering yourself a better shot, a quicker shot at healing. It's really just like having this primal baseline to support you in these events. And, I don't think anyone's looking for catastrophic events, but they could also be minor ones. A bad couple of weeks of sleep, right? Or some trauma you're going through, some stress, some over cortisol production. And you know what? This is the kind of baseline you want to try to achieve. And it kind of reminds me of the other. Yeah.
And all of those things are going to deplete our omega-3 reserves. Everything that you just mentioned, including physical activity. I want all athletes paying close attention to this. If you are very athletic, you are using more of your omega-3s because you're stressing your system in a healthy way to make yourself healthier. That's critical. A lot of athletes have more saturated fats in their cell membrane and not enough of the omega-3s in their cell membrane. Why? Because they're exercising and they're converting the omega-3 into the anti-inflammatory signals because they're stressing themselves out in a healthy way to build more muscle, to create that challenge like you're talking about. The stress response is important. So if you're very, very physically active, you really want to start testing and stop guessing because they recently found out that if you can increase your omega-3 in your tissues, that it directly correlates to an increase in VO2 max. VO2 max, if you're not familiar, is the most important biomarker for health identified yet in many people's opinions. That's the master measurement of your body's ability to metabolize oxygen. If you're very deficient in omega-3, you have a much lower VO2 max. If you can correct this imbalance in your cell membranes, the red blood cells can carry oxygen more effectively through your whole body. In fact, there's a big paper that just came out, that shows high omega-6, low omega-3 is correlated to an increase in all causes of mortality. This is going to be the most critical number. Everyone's talking about inflammation now. It's different than it was 20 years ago when we started talking about it. I hear every person I talk to says, well, it's all about inflammation. Great. What's your omega-6/3 balance score?
Well, and it's interesting because we could go back to Dr. Andrew Weil, one of the first players up in this game, and what part of his like 8 weeks to Optimum Health, he was all about anti-inflammatory. The thing at the time, he was down. He was like omegas, right, and olive oil. Like that was kind of his. He was starting to get there a little bit with the olive oil and the fish, but people weren't hearing him for. And then he blew up, but then he got onto other things. I think people lost the message. Yeah.
And that's why Zinzino's vision is we inspire change in life. When I got my test results, I was so motivated. My compliance has never been better. I take that balanced oil shot every single day. Why? Because I know I'm in the danger zone. I'm not in the safe zone. Now, I'm about to take my second test today on another friend of ours on their show. We're going to do it live. They're going to do their first test live on the show, and I'm going to do my second test live on the show. Listen to this. 99% of people that take this test that tells you how good your diet is and if you're in the safe zone fail the first test. 99%. The laboratory, and I just came back from there in Norway, they've tested 1.5 million people. They work with Harvard, University of Cambridge, King's College in London, the Max Planck Institute, University of Oxford. I mean, it's an incredible operation. And Zinzino's their number one customer. Their scientist, their lead scientist, Thomas Gunderson, CEO and CSO, told us 99% of people who take the balance test fail, and they're not in the 3-to-1 safe zone. This is exciting. They've 99% of people that take the second test, meaning they stayed on the balanced oil, dosed by weight, and took it every day and retested in 120 days. So let's be fair. They were compliant. 99% of the second test, people greatly improve or pass. How exciting is that?
And it's fantastic. I think I was just saying, like, well, if you feel like your diet's crap, should you just sort of like do the protocol and then test? But I like the before and after because it's important to see the change.
Well, it is important to see the change because that's what empowers people. I've spent my whole life in education. I was the global educator and brand ambassador for Nordic Naturals. I was the vice president of human nutrition for CD Sciences, makers of Plus CBD. And everyone asked me the same question. My whole career, how do I know this stuff is actually working? Well, no. Here's a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human study we did on that. No. But how do I know it's working in me? How do I know it's working for me? And that's where I think it'll be unthinkable 10 years from now to be taking dietary supplements without testing. This kind of information on this balance test is more actionable than most information you would get from a genetic test or even from a stool sample test. That's important information, but what can you really do about it? If this is a test that you do in the privacy of your own home that tells you how good your diet is and whether or not you're in the safe zone, and 120 days later, by following the protocol, you're back into the inflammation resolution zone, you're out of the inflammation danger zone and you're in the safe zone, there are billions of people that need this, and everyone needs to cross it off their list. And that's why I'm so happy you were willing to revisit the subject, Elle. Some people say, well, I know all about omega-6s and omega-3s. Great. The next conversation is, what's your number? That's where we're headed.
I love it. And we will put everything in the show notes to connect, but let's just verbalize it. Where do we go to check out the test and then the oils in the event we want to go forward and get this going, which everyone should test this. This is, and I'm going to redo it because it's been so long. So yeah.
Well, we go to testomega3.com. And the reason I want you to go to testomega3.com is if you give us your information, I'm working with a team of all-star scientists and doctors. We're going to send you a drip campaign. You'll be able to get access to the test and the oil. It's $109. It's not expensive.
No.
But what I really want is if you go to testomega3.com and you're willing to give us your information, I will send you, our team will send you papers. We'll send you the big study that came out showing high omega-6, low omega-3 connected to an increase in all causes of mortality. We'll send you the paper that shows high omega-3 and polyphenols together increase glutathione threefold. We'll send you the paper from the Journal of the American Medical Association that shows olive oil, 7 grams a day over 28 years, lowers the risk of dementia-related death. So we will not just say to you, here, you can get the test and the oil here at testomega3.com. We're doing fine. That's not what the intention is. Education, empowerment, education. Sign up at testomega3.com and we'll keep sending you relevant papers so we can share with all of our friends and all of our family the simple at-home blood spot test that tells you how good your diet is and if you're in the safe zone.
I love it. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about this topic, other than clearly we see how critical this is for life, anti-aging, brain health? Any lasting thoughts before we go?
Yes, I also want people to consider this an opportunity to join my team. I mean, our mission is to inspire health and wealth for our customers, family, friends by being the most customer-friendly direct sales company in the world every day. And by 2035, we plan on having 20 million customers. And by 2050, we plan on having 100 million customers. Zinzino has plans to become the biggest personalized nutrition company in the world. So if you're interested in learning not just about the test, but about the oil, when you go to testomega3.com, if you're interested in joining my team and our team, then we can help you get started on your journey to start testing and stop guessing.
I love it. I love it. Everyone, this stuff is very important. Nutrition is the foundation. And also, my gosh, how connected it is to our neurotransmitters, our brain, our ability to even access happiness, right? So that primordial baseline needs to be at the right balance levels. Thank you so much for always educating us and bringing us the latest and greatest in how to live a great life and anti-age phenomenally. Thank you so much, Stuart. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, I would so appreciate you leaving a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about partner discounts on amazing products, visit elleruss.com/discounts.